The Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, and another major act passed in 1965 to ensure voting rights, and still a further act passed in 1968 to require fair and affordable housing. And all of these acts in the 1960s, combined with what is called the Civil Rights Movement, were designed to end what is known as Jim Crow segregation. That is to say, de jure segregation. We go all the way back to the 19th century in the passage of the acts to eliminate, first of all, slavery with the 13th Amendment, and then to make the newly freed slave a citizen. Those were African Americans with the 14th Amendment, and to ensure equality. And then even the 15th Amendment that gave new African Americans who were men the right to vote. Yet in the 1890s, the Supreme Court passed a ruling in a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. And Plessy said there should be legal equality, but there didn't have to be social equality. So you could segregate blacks on the train into one car and put the whites into another car, and you satisfied the legal equality that all can ride on the train from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, but they can remain segregated by race. And that went on to establish a whole regime of segregation in lunch counters and in hotels and on buses and in transportation and in housing and employment, with that telltale sign at a water fountain for whites only, with a separate water fountain for blacks. So it took nearly a half a century from the latter part of the 1890s, going from the 19th century into the 20th century, with Jim Crow segregation throughout mainly the South, but with some de facto segregation in the North too. And it was the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, that prohibited discrimination in any places of public accommodation, and the 1965 Voting Act to ensure equal voting and eliminate discriminatory practice, and the 1968 Fair Housing Act to ensure access to housing, to end what was known as Jim Crow or de jure segregation.